Hey, and welcome in everyone to another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. I'm Tim Sohn, literally hanging out in the woods here in Northeast Pennsylvania with Sohn Social Media Solutions, and I'm excited. I'm really excited for today's show, Jim. Jim Fuhs, are you excited for today's show?
I'm excited because this is a really good topic and something that people are always asking about. Like, I need help with social selling, and what exactly
Ooh,
is that? So I think this is going to be a great topic. So I'm very excited about it.
I agree. So Jim, shall we turn it over to our guest?
Yes. Let's say hello to our guest, Denise, who you are, I guess, have known for a while, and looking forward to hearing what she's going to tell us about social selling today.
Good morning, Tim and Jim. I appreciate it, and I'm super honored to be here. So thank you. And social selling, yes, I love social selling a lot because it is so very different than it used to be. And I love how dynamic it is and how different and agile it has turned it has changed over the course of the last 2 years. So I love to come and talk about social selling and what it really is. So thank you.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Denise. What do you do, and how did you get interested in social selling?
So I am in software sales and have been I've been in sales for over 30 years probably, or over 25, I don't remember, a long time. And I've been in software sales for over 20 years. And I have always done traditional selling. I started when you went knocking door to door on businesses way back in the telecom days when you were selling long distance to what it is today, where it's really driven around social media. So I've done cold calling. I have sent emails. I have left messages, voicemails. I have knocked on doors. I've done it all. I have carried a bag my entire life. Well, adult professional life, that is. But I live here in Houston. I have 2 children. If you haven't noticed my posts, I turned 50 this year, but I have a 7 and a 12 turning 8 and 13. So I am enjoying my children a lot. And that's about it for me, I guess.
Wow. I will say though, you're a little bit brave, Denise, by having that later start in about the time your youngest one's in high school. You're going to maybe be like, oh my gosh, when are they going to graduate?
I know. Well, I say my child is on my payroll till I'm 60, which only takes me to when he turns 18. That doesn't include when he goes off to college. So I'm going to be working for forever.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for sharing all of that, Denise. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Let us know where you're tuning in from around the world. And we want to know, are you team tea or team coffee? Let us know. Denise, do you have a preference?
Coffee.
Coffee. What about you, Jim?
Team coffee and
Team
in my
coffee.
StreamYard mug. And I'm actually
Yes.
been trying something now for about a week is I'm drinking my coffee black. There's nothing added.
Ooh. What about
That's
Denise? How do
great.
you take your coffee?
Oh, mine's frou-frou. Unless it's espresso, like at a Starbucks or a coffee shop, I'm going to drink it with milk and sugar.
There you go. Milk and sugar. I love it. And we want to shout out everyone who's tuning in this morning. Garen is here. Thank you for being here, Garen. Marcello is tuning in. Thanks for being here. And Katie Simpson is here. She says, hi guys and gal. Thanks for being here. Maria Rouse is in the house.
Hey,
Hi
Maria.
Maria. Great
Yeah.
to see you here. Yes.
Yeah, I've been hanging out a little bit with well, I mean, it's weird because it's asynchronous hanging out with Katie on Volley, and that's been a lot of fun having
Yes.
conversations over there
What is
over in
volley?
oh, we'll have to have a chat about that later.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't want us to
Maria.
I don't want us to go down that rabbit hole right now, but
Yes, we're
really
already
love it.
going down the team tea and coffee rabbit hole right now.
Right.
Maria says she's team tea, and Marcello's in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta. Andy
Yes.
is in Denver, Colorado, team tea. And Maria is in Sacramento, California. So thank you everyone for being here. So today we're going to be talking about social selling tips for small businesses. So Jim, do you want to take away question number 1 for Denise?
Yes. So what has changed with selling since before COVID or pre-COVID, whichever word you want to use?
Yeah, or COVID, since COVID started, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So selling before COVID was very much the traditional sales. People cold called all the time. And while those that were the recipients of those cold calls didn't love them, they would most certainly at times take them. But you were out in the field more. You had an opportunity to sit with your customers and to have conversations with them or prospective clients. And once COVID hit, we all became super isolated and we craved that interpersonal relationship with others because we felt so alone. And so I think selling has changed significantly since then because you're not in front of the customer like you used to be. You can't just hop on a plane or pick up the phone because they're working from home and not everyone gives out their cell phone numbers. And so the impact has changed the sales cycle and the process tremendously, such that they don't really want cold calling anymore. And they're not accepting the pitch on the first. And it's the pitch the ditch now, or ditch the pitch now, right? Because people don't want to be sold on their first interaction with a salesperson anymore. And it's really about building relationships. And it's always been, I think, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I do think sales has a lot to do with relationship.
Yeah,
But
I would even just add into what you just said, and I've been doing this for a while, and it might upset some people. If you try to call me and I don't recognize your number, I'm not answering it.
mm-mm.
And I think part of that was like we need to take back our time. And if I'm always answering the phone because somebody's calling me, or even the messages we get, right? You need a new car warranty or things like that. So if it's important to leave a voicemail, but I agree with you 100%, right? You got to build relationships first. And so I'm amazed that there's still a lot of people, though, I think, that subscribe to the cold calling. So, yeah, definitely interested to see how you have approached this.
What I find really interesting, Jim, is that even talking to people who try to pitch me the first time, and I'm a sales rep, so I don't mind a good sales call. I can appreciate a good sales call. But I have actually tried to teach or at least offer my advice unsolicited, but my advice nonetheless. And it hasn't gone well. Their response is, "Hey, I don't care. I'm meeting my numbers and I'm having lots of phone calls or conversations." Well, yeah, when it's quantity over quality, sure, you're going to have some. What does that mean?
That's one of these moments. That was a mic drop moment. That
Oh,
was
literally. Literally. Yeah, those are such good points, Denise. And I think too, since COVID, I know I'm curious what you and Jim think also. I know I've become more purposeful with my time also. What do you think about that thought?
As the person providing the service and selling your service, or just as the individual, the recipient on the other end, or both?
I was thinking more of as the recipient on the other end, but I guess I'm curious in both perspectives.
Yeah, I think both are important because you, as a sales rep or as the person who is offering a service or promoting your business or whatever it is that you're doing, I think as that individual, where you spend your time has got to be more important than it was in the past, because again, it's not about quantity, it's about quality now. And so you've got to know your customer, you got to know your audience, you have to be able to know your product and your niche and be able to sell. And I think because of that, we as recipients, we value our time even more because we're having to juggle so many different things, working from home and living in the hybrid model and whatever it is that you're doing today. So those are my thoughts. Yours, Jim?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I think that's exactly it. I mean, we have to be focused, right? Time. I mean, and I think even more so. I had someone do a poll on LinkedIn the other day. It's like, are you back to doing, in-person networking like you were before? And as much as like you've talked about relationship building is important, well, we can also build it virtually. And I've found that, and it may be the same for you as well. My, if you want to call it, the people I want to work with are more than just in the Atlanta area. So by having to take that step back and work virtually, that made me kind of go back to, you know what? Things like Zoom or now Volley allow me to connect with people in a more purposeful way. And I find that to be very powerful and much more effective than going to, some of these in-person networking meetings where I know those people because it was like, we can still build those relationships, but doesn't mean I have to go to some of these meetings.
I agree.
Yeah. And Maria says establishing good rapport and relationships is a must with sales.
Yes,
And, and she also says, I also will add what is unique about you, your service, and your product. So Denise, why do you think social selling is so important? And maybe also just let's start off with, when we say social selling, what does that mean exactly?
Social selling is selling on social media platforms, using the social media as your platform to generate either pipeline or sales, or at least interest, and which turns into pipe, which turns into sales, right? So social selling is super important if you're going to talk about building relationships. I mean, if you look at 2019, I don't know what the numbers were on 20 or before 2019 or 2020 with LinkedIn, but we know it's grown to 850,000 over the last 2 years. Right. And we know that the expectation is 2 more billion or 850 million. Did I say that? And then 2 billion within the next 2 years. That's tremendous growth. So everyone is going to either move to LinkedIn or they're going to go to Twitter now that Elon Musk bought Twitter. Might be even more.
That's still up in the air now, but
yeah. Oh.
I'm staying on Twitter no matter what. So.
And so it is really utilizing your community, both on media platforms and then outside of those, bringing them together now and selling them in a meaningful, purposeful way through your social media platforms. Like, for example, I didn't publish anything, but my company published an ebook around artificial intelligence and computer vision. And I put a link, or I put a picture of it, and I posted a little bit of advertisement around it and said DM or comment if you're interested in the link. And I've had several people that are interested. That's called social selling. And I believe in the rule where you give 3 things before you ask for one. 3 things before you ask for one. So give 3 before you ask for one. And so in that giving could be anything from a direct message with a resource, a link to a resource, or it could be a free service offering. It could be a webinar. It could be an ebook, a white paper, whatever you want. Give them 3 things before you ask for one. And they're more willing then to probably give you that one thing, even if that one thing is just an initial conversation, because now they've seen you, they've heard you, and they have understood you. Now they're willing to get to know you.
Jim, can you drop that mic again?
Yes. And Denise, I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit of a follow-up on that too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you talk about giving, right? It seems like, and I don't know if it's still the case, but a lot of times companies, individuals, whatever, it's like they don't well, I can't tell people this without them paying me because it's like it's my secret sauce. But the reality is probably 90% of the stuff that we would share, you could find on YouTube University. And I think it comes down to, if all 3 of us said the same thing on different channels, our voice is going to resonate differently, and they may pick one of us over the other 2 just because of the way we said it. And I think that's what sometimes people miss. And so I know I've definitely looked to be more, of a resource provider. Like if I saw you posted something great about, even if it's in an area that I work in, I would share it because I think that that's more valuable than like, oh, well, gosh, I hope nobody sees that. I mean, do you think that's part of the problem that we have?
I think traditionally, yes, I do see a movement towards giving more, but I still think that you're right. Companies have not adopted that strategy fully yet, and they're afraid. But when you talk about your service, and as Maria mentioned, your secrets, or you mentioned secret sauce, Jim, but I can't remember what the exact verbiage that Maria used. But when you want to differentiate yourself, there are three different types of differentiators, and one of them is your unique differentiators. Most of them are going to be differentiators that someone else has. You just have a slight variation to it. The unique ones are the ones that are going to set you apart from your competitors. And so knowing those and being able to share those are really kind of fun. And if you do that, you can do that for free in a way that people learn more about you and respect and find you more credible.
Awesome.
Awesome. We have a few questions. Dr. Alexandria Rosa is saying, is it true that platforms are discouraging or penalizing using the phrase DM me in your posts? Do you know the answer to that?
I don't have the answer to that. Do y'all?
I don't know. Do you know, Jim?
I don't. I had not heard that. I mean, but I think if that's a concern, right? Think about, because that sounds like that's a call to action. Maybe you just say, right, if you want to find out more, send me a message, right? Just kind of spell it out and maybe get away from the, of course, some people might say, well, what's a DM?
Right.
You got to remember, your audience may not all know what's, sometimes we forget, we speak in acronyms and people will say, what's a DM? So I think that's something to be to think about, but call to action as well. Or even say, if you're interested, let me know in the comments or something like that. And then you can maybe reach out to them as well. I mean, experiment with it, but I haven't seen that, but, we'll have to ask. We'll have to ask the Facebook and other experts if that's becoming a thing.
Yeah, for sure. And then Chris Stone has a question. He says, "How will social selling, say that sentence 10 times, change when these platforms allow for direct purchases with shipping, a la Amazon, etc.?"
Well, I think it's going to continue to evolve. That's a good question. I think it's going to continue to evolve. What that will look like when we can start selling all of that on all of these different platforms, I don't really know. But I can assure you it will be different, because the one thing you can count on is change, right? Always you can count on change. I do believe it's going to continue to get more and more robust, which means that you're going to have fewer and fewer people that are listening to a 2-minute pitch of any sorts, period. Even if you've given 3 and asked for 1, they're going to want to understand the relationship that they can build with you first. Then they're going to want you to be able to converse with them in a manner that they're not being sold at all, even in the first one, after you've given 3 things. I think it's going to get even harder and harder for salespeople in general, or for those that own their own businesses and are selling their services or their business or their products. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Oh yeah, and I guess too, because we're talking about social selling. So it sounds like you're doing it for your company, but then we have people out there that they are looking to hire social sellers. It almost sometimes to me sounds like they're hiring and I know that's not exactly the same. Like, oh, I'm hiring a social media person to engage with others about my product to get people in. What do you think of that? Is that something that is a good idea, or do you think it's more like, you have to really empower your team to understand they need to engage with others? Because I do think that that's an issue as well. And I've been reading David Meerman Scott's newest book on the new rules of PR and marketing, and that's part of what he talks about. Right, we're still doing a lot of things the old-fashioned way.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I'm so passionate about this. If I think about an organization that has 200 employees, for example, and maybe only 100 of them, half of them are on a social media platform, maybe just one, right? And then you think about how many followers they have. They may have maybe, well, they at least have 100. Usually if you're on a social media platform, you've got more than 100 followers or friends or whatever platform that applies to, right? If you took those 100 people who are messaging one succinct message every single week in their own authentic way on their own media platform, can you imagine the reach that would have if you take just even 50 out of 100 potential people in their network, 50 times 100 employees out of the 200, that's 5,000 impressions in one day potentially. So you're expanding your reach and you're saving marketing dollars. So hiring one person to do that role isn't really going to be any different than having a marketing team do it. What you really need is your entire company, not just one team, but your entire company that's willing to help you sell. Give them a message. Let them message that however they want for that week, as often as they want. Give them resources like links or guides or whatever it is that you want to give them. Allow them to start building their network, and then their network will grow, because as we know, even just on LinkedIn, what is it, 2% of the users are content drivers, right?
Right. Yeah.
And if you comment or post, you become a content maker, contributor. So, I mean, just think about the marketing dollars that could be saved. If Walmart just there was a Forbes magazine article that was just recently published where Walmart has exceeded, like, I think $2 billion in advertising costs. And don't quote me on that number, but it's I want to say it was 2 billion, in which they were using a third party. But what they were finding in this Forbes article was that they were getting more traction by using their own social media platform. Now take that, their own social media platform, and give it to their employees. Same message every week.
Right. Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that whole thing of, even for nonprofits, I've always been amazed that the people that support the nonprofits are not even given, like, the messaging maybe to share out with their, friends and family as to why this nonprofit might be important, because when it's in someone's voice that's relatable, you're more likely, I think, to take action, because it goes back to what you talked about earlier, Denise, and it's building that know, like, and trust.
Yep.
Yes. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break for a message from our sponsor, StreamYard, and we will be right back after these messages. And we are back, and we're dancing, and we're here on the Tim and Jim Show talking to Denise, talking all about social selling today. So Jim, do you want to take the next question for Denise?
Of course. So why is being authentic so important, Denise?
Well, that's what we've just been talking about, Jim, when you just mentioned how they really want to be able to know, and trust that individual. So you have to be authentic. People will smell when you aren't authentic. They can tell. I mean, what do you usually call that person that is trying to sell you something? You always relate them back to the car salesman, right? And you think of car salesmen as kind of slimy, although they're not. And I appreciate salespeople, whether they're in car sales or not. And I don't think car salesmen are sleazy. So make sure I qualify that. But that's what one thinks about, right? That's always been a stereotype.
Right.
And that is because they'll sell you whatever the newest thing is on the car, whether they believe in it or not, or traditionally that's what they did. They don't do that so much today. But the reality is, when someone's not being authentic. And it doesn't mean you have to spill your entire guts and share your personal life. It just means that you have to show them who you are as an individual, and show some personality, as well as show a little bit of what your personal life might look like. It doesn't have to be a picture of your family. It doesn't have to be, information about your personal life, but something that just shares with them who you are.
Because it makes you more relatable, right? As a
Mhm.
human being.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, like what you've done, Tim. I mean, you've, over these last several months kind of opened up about your story with cancer. And I think that that's been extremely, I mean, one, it's been real, right? That's you. And I think that by you opening up to people about that, that's given them a different perspective on you that people like appreciate, I would say more so than anything else.
I appreciate that, Jim. But you don't have to share your cancer story. You could share that you like Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee, which I like that too. Or you could share, I mean, you don't have to share your family, but I do like sharing about my family as well because I love my family. And, some people are uncomfortable sharing their family on social media, and I get that too. I wasn't for a long time. But there's other things that, like, Jim, you talk about sports all the time, right? So that might
Right.
be something that makes you more relatable.
Yep. Or even, I do marketing the Marine Corps way because that's a big part of my
Yeah.
life. I mean,
Mhm.
once a Marine, always a Marine. It's a part of my ethos and what drives me. And why sometimes people will say like, "Oh, how come?" Like Chris Stone sometimes will say, "How come you never panic?" It's like, well, because when you really look at what we're doing, it's not life and death. And so,
Mm.
so I just, you just got to figure it out. And I think that's been part of the problem, not to digress too much with what social media has done to younger people and mental health is it's constantly in their face 24/7, and we have to teach them it's okay, step away from the phone or the computer and don't feel like you have to be in front of it all the time. Take some time for yourself. And it's good to see that that's starting to happen as well.
Agreed.
So, Denise, do you think companies are adopting social selling yet?
No. I mean, I think we made mention to that a little bit earlier. We hit on that topic. And I think what is very sad is people still believe that it only takes one person to message out. And yes, sure, one person makes a difference. But when you've got an entire organization of people at your fingertips, why not use them? Save those marketing budget dollars. And instead of hiring one person or two or three people, allow your entire team to do that. No one's really doing that yet today. The solo and entrepreneurs are, yes, because that's a different world, but we're talking about the corporate organizations that are not. And I think they're going to have to jump on the bandwagon. If they don't, I think we're going to have a problem. They're going to be left behind, right? Which is, I think, my biggest takeaway. If we think about all of the social media conversations that are happening today in social selling, if you don't start as a company, whether you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, or you own an organization of some sorts, profit or nonprofit, doesn't matter the size. If you are not adopting social media fully, you will be left in the dust and your competitors will overtake you.
Yeah, and I think too, even the use of we call it user generated content, right? Like why aren't you using your biggest fans as part of your efforts to socially sell and having them say, hey, we're sharing, you know, the stuff that Tim said about our product on our on our socials or resharing. It's like we really love having clients like this because
Mhm.
this is what it's all about, but they don't even do that sometimes. And it's interesting because if you think about it, affiliate marketing to me is social selling.
It is, yes.
And the drive is by the person that likes the product because you're not going to be a good affiliate if you don't believe in the product.
Exactly. So it sets you apart from your competitors.
That's so true. That's so true. Well, this has been a great conversation, Denise. Before we go, well, first of all, is there anything else that you would like to share about social selling before we go?
No, except that if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I may not drive all the content, but you can most certainly connect with me and I can answer any questions that you have outside of this session today. And I want to
Awesome.
thank you guys for having me. I'm super honored. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, Jim?
No, just this has been a great conversation, and I appreciate it, Denise. And so I'll reach out to you about volley after this. So
Okay.
you may find that it's something that's cool, and we're working on getting them scheduled to be on a future episode
Awesome.
of the Tim and Jim show. And Tim, I can't remember if you're on there or not, but if you are, I have someone I want to connect you with over there that I found in one of the volley things I'm in that I think would be at least worth a conversation, as I like to say.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Denise. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. See you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.